welcome to this Degenerate Friday edition of Bury Your Bookie. I'm Jeff DeForest. Very happy to have you guys with us. And I think our point about the preseason was proven last night as you had the first action of the National Football League's fabled preseason. And as I've been talking about, I guess this really affected me because I'm not used to the hammering on social media. When doing radio, you would always have your detractors doing TV, calling boxing, doing whatever I've done over my career. There were always people that would imply that you were an idiot, a lunatic, a fool, a clown, a buffoon. But I have never been so denigrated and publicly humiliated as I was last year when we started this whole thing, Bury Your Bookie on No Filter. And I suggested to people that they were criminally insane if they were betting on the NFL preseason. And this thing got like 500,000 treatments in total on Instagram and various other social media sites and platforms. And out of the 500,000, 499,999 people said, "You're a fucking schmuck. What do you know? We're cashing every day. We're dancing to the windows." Betting unders in NFL preseason games. So last night was a classic example, though, as they open a season. I mean, how the hell would you possibly anticipate that Dan Campbell was going to start a linebacker as his guy to return kicks just for a goof, I guess? And unless he had a substantial amount of money, like 4 or 5 times himself at 100 to 1 on the first play of the season being a fumble, there would be no logical reason to go ahead and do this. And this is what you guys are betting on. Did anybody know that this was going to happen? I don't know. We bring in the professor here, and I believe you're on the same side as me. As much as you love to wager and can't wait for the college football season to get underway, would you say that Baker acting would be appropriate for anybody that was thinking and betting NFL preseason games with any measure of confidence whatsoever? How are you, Professor?
I wouldn't have said that up until 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But with the recent CBA and the reduction of preseason games and the fact that nobody is playing their starters at all in the preseason, I'd say let's at the very least, if you were somebody who bet it seriously, you have to be redoing your models and updating the algorithm and whatnot to factor in different things because again, last night, a really good example. I'm not even saying the opening kickoff thing, because look, the Lions love him, their fans love it. The breaks have been. Ben Johnson is gone, Glenn is gone. Like the breaks have been thrown off Dan Campbell at this point, and I mean we were already at the point where anything can happen. And in the first half, he basically broke out the Mike Leach. Just we're not fumbling, we're not punting. I don't care if it's 4th and 19.
Yeah.
Thing. Like honestly, I don't know if there's a ceiling on what is possible with Dan Campbell, particularly in the preseason. At this point with the Detroit Lions, I mean honestly, just about anything. Jahmyr Gibbs might come out, and it won't be Jahmyr Gibbs. It'd be like a backup. He might come out and run the option. Bring back the wishbone. Like, I don't know that there is, on the combination of Dan Campbell's unfiltered lunacy and idiocy. Well, okay. There's actually in the moment last night where Collinsworth was talking about it. He was like, before Ben Johnson, Dan Campbell was running the plays and calling the plays here in Detroit.
Exactly.
So it's not that unfamiliar. It's like, yeah, but you saw what happened before Ben Johnson got. I mean, again, I'm not sure there's a limit on what is possible. So, linebacker bringing back kicks, sure, why not? I'm not sure it's even surprising. Look, I might, and I think if you go back to the Ravens streak, obviously, which
it would be like betting a horse that had a 400-pound jockey on it.
The Ravens streak, which became a little bit of a preseason annuity that ended a couple of years ago. There were some models. Again, I used to. The one I liked was betting coaches who had just elevated from college into the NFL because they had that whole. When we're playing directional Michigan, we're going to build up a winning culture. We're going to change the culture here. So
Mark Beebe notorious for just dumping every preseason game when he was riding a high with the Bills.
I think those trends were stronger a couple of years ago, and I think you have to probably again reevaluate your entire. And I said, if I were an NFL coach, I would personally, after last year, be reevaluating this whole I'm not playing any starters ever in the preseason thing because so many offenses got off to slow starts in the regular season, the first
Yes.
2 or 3 weeks of the regular season last year, after no preseason play. I don't legitimately know. Harbaugh, Trey Lance, my understanding, was only supposed to play 3 drives last night, but got looking good to the point where Harbaugh was like, "Screw it, we're going to keep him in till basically the middle of the fourth quarter, late third, whenever they
Yeah.
finally switched over to DJU there." Um, I don't know if there is a definitive model for what's going to happen in preseason games. So honestly, it's much like my own thing with college football, where over the last 2 or 3 years, because of NIL, because of the transfer portal, because rosters have become so much more flexible, you have to relook at the things you've evaluated with. I think if you are betting in the NFL preseason, you have to be going through that same evaluation process right now, because as much as you never knew who was going to play, like, you really don't know who's going
No
to play.
idea. And no idea how they're going to perform against a bunch of truck drivers and delivery people that
Well,
are
again,
on the field from the opposition. It's kind of like playing Russian roulette with 3 bullets in the chamber.
if you feel like you have a pretty firm grasp, and it used to be relatively easy to do in
Yeah.
the NFL preseason about who was going to play, that the starter's going to play one drive. Hall of Fame game was usually the starter played one drive. The backup quarterback finished out the first half. If you had a guy who was competing for the backup quarterback job, a rookie or a relatively young guy, he might get a couple drives. And then it was sheer garbage time. It was the
Yeah.
UPS drivers. Now, again, I'm not sure there's a firm model for any preseason game because, again, different coaches, different philosophies. The one thing you seem to could take for granted last year is that no starters were going to play ever.
Yes.
And we'll see what happens this year.
Yeah, pretty rough go. I mean, you may as well just put a blindfold on and ask for the last drag on a cigarette. But if you won, good. And of course, the early results, the trend reversed as the over was accomplished relatively easily last night, in spite of the miss by Dicker, the kicker there for the Chargers early on. It had people a little bit nervous with the turnovers and the lack of effort. That
And the
seemed
Lions threw up,
right.
an early pick in the end zone too.
Yeah,
So,
very
you
abysmal. Yes.
lost one there.
All right. The first game goes over, and all you people that were disparaging remarks is not even a fair characteristic of what I received. Getting hammered because everybody was cashing on the unders last year. But you always have to figure the book is going to adjust and try to tempt people into betting the overs. They did last night, went with a really low line and ended up being eclipsed by the middle of the third quarter. All right, you have some good stuff for us today, Professor, because you're going to start getting into some futures on college football. And I know today you're looking at a few things, very, very deeply researched things. Your
I
ideas
don't.
on over under totals. I mean, the information was impressive in the ACC and the Big 12. So go ahead and fire away.
Well, again, we talked about it for the last couple of weeks. We're going to start to preview a little bit of the season. I have looked at Heisman. I have looked at the national title. We'll do that the week before kickoff. But for the next couple of weeks, we want to present you the totals, the win totals for the various conferences. I'm going to start this week with the ACC and the Big 12. We'll start with the ACC, number one, just alphabetically. And number two, it is the 2 local teams. We'll start down here with the University of Miami, coming in at a win total of 9.5. There is a fairly good sized juice adjustment towards the under on this, and I gotta say I'm with it on the 9.5 and the under. Miami, you look at their out of now. Worth reminding people, these totals are regular season schedule only. Conference playoffs don't count. Bowl games don't count. Any playoff matchups don't count. Miami comes in at 9.5. I think that's ambitious given who the coach is, because
Yep.
Mario Cristobal has disappointed us season and season again. If you're a Miami fan, if you're an Oregon fan, I don't want to call him a human under on this kind of bet, but very arguable with the slip ups.
Yeah.
Pretty much an annual tradition that you have. Again, you look at Miami starting their out of conference schedule. They got Notre Dame to kick off the season. They're currently sitting as 2.5-point underdogs at home. Florida in week 4. You could sit here, I don't want to Needle Gators fans, but I will tell you a preview. They're going under. Not a big fan there. I think the Canes probably 4 or 5 point favorites at home in that one. Sandwiched between that, Bethune-Cookman and USF. USF has been kind of frisky against Miami teams in recent years. So not the most difficult out of conference scheduling in human history because you get both of the big matchups at home, but not the easiest one either, particularly for a team with a 9.5 total. You look at the conference scheduling. I'm gonna, look, the SMU game, they're at SMU later in the season. I believe it's the first week in November. They might be underdogs in that spot. I personally, if you were doing it now, would say Miami's a slight favorite in that game. But the rest of their conference games, they're going to be pretty substantial favorites. They're going to probably be north of a touchdown in every other matchup. But you're basically saying, again, with a fairly easy conference schedule, they do miss Clemson. Again, they missed Georgia Tech, who's been a bugaboo for the University of Miami, really since Miami joined the ACC 20 years ago. You're basically saying Miami's going undefeated in conference play. I don't know that I, with Cristobal, can take that for granted. I would lean towards the under the 9 with Miami stubbing their toe at least once, if not twice, during the course of the regular season, just because that's a Mario Cristobal thing. The other one, we talked about it in the show, I think Florida State is maybe the most interesting number in the country at 6.5. And the reason I think it's interesting is because I think this team could easily miss by 2 or 3 games in either direction. I think if everything goes right for Florida State, they could be an 8 or 9 win team. If everything goes wrong, they could be a 3 or 4 win team again. And that's because you look at it last season, which was a disaster from Florida State. There are a lot of people who are like, well, it was Murphy's Law. Everything that went wrong could have gone wrong, did go wrong the entire season. It was just a one-off. It was a fluke. But then you look at the schedule, and it was not a particularly difficult schedule, and they still only managed to win 3 ball games throughout the course of the season. Why can't that repeat, particularly for a team that doesn't bring much back? I think they only have 5 or 6 returning starters. Now, when you're as bad as you were last year for Florida State, it's 6, by the way, and only 1 on offense, and it's the tight end in an offense where Norvell doesn't throw to the tight end very much. You could make a case that there's really not a lot of hope for improvement in Florida State. I actually lean towards the former, that everything that could go wrong did go wrong for Florida State in 2024, and they should bounce back to some degree. I would lean a little bit towards the over, but I definitely see the under perspective here, particularly when you kick the season off going against Alabama. And look, Alabama is a bit of a mystery team themselves with no Nick Saban. How is the Kalen DeBoer era going to play out? But we also know what we talked about for years with Alabama, which is don't let Alabama beat you twice. Don't let them come in and you get so physically beat up that game that for the next 2 or 3 weeks, you're still in recovery mode and you lose to somebody stupid because you're still physically beat up by Alabama. Is that a possibility for Florida State? 100% yes, it is possible. I'm not saying it's likely, but it is possible, particularly with a quarterback. It's his first start, and he's a freelancing guy anyway. I don't know that I necessarily want my guy running around against Alabama defensive linemen in that first game of the year. Other interesting numbers in Florida State. Clemson, you talked about them. Something about going undefeated in the ACCs.
They were the favorites to go undefeated in conference play in the ACC.
And it was a ridiculously low number, right? It was like 2 to 1.
Plus 220, something like that.
Yeah, that's a ridiculously low number. Clemson, they are basically, if you look at their win total, they're basically saying they're going to go undefeated in the ACC because they are a 9.5 win total. But they start the season by playing LSU, and Clemson has lost 3 out of the last 4 openers. And they end the season by playing a South Carolina team that's going to start the preseason in the top 10. Is a lot of people's pick to go to the playoffs, or one of the SEC teams to go to the playoffs. And South Carolina has played really well against them in recent years, under Beamer. So, 2 very, let's say, and that game's at South Carolina, right? So I would say 2 fairly likely losses for Clemson, which means to get to that 10-win total, you've got to go unbeaten through the rest of play, including conference play. I would lean a little bit under. Look, is Clemson going to be favored in every ACC regular season game they play? They are. Does that mean they're actually going to go undefeated? I don't know. Particularly, I believe week 3 they go to Georgia Tech after starting the season with LSU. We saw it a couple of years ago where they lost that early season game to Duke, and it looked like mentally they didn't recover for the first month and a half of the season. Could something similar happen with LSU? I would say it's entirely possible. So again, lean a little bit towards the under to Clemson there at 9.5. It's a very ambitious number. Is the schedule incredibly difficult? No, but again, two SEC teams, both of whom were going to be fairly highly ranked to start the season, probably both within the top 15, if not the top 10. Garrett Nussmeier's at LSU is one of the Heisman favorite sellers at South Carolina. Another one who's among the Heisman favorites. And South Carolina is stacked on defense. Again, you're saying they're not going to lose any other games. Difficult to do. I don't know that I would want that prop at 220, and I don't know if I want to be holding a Clemson over ticket at 9.5.
And especially since I root for Dabo to lose every game, it would be hard for me to sit there and embrace the over. So I like your line of thinking on this. Take the under 9 on a hook there with the Clemson Tigers, and they do have, as evidenced by the odds makers, they're thinking they're going to win all of these conference games, and that's going to get them near the number. All right, Big 12. You're also looking at Big 12 teams.
Let's stay on the ACC for a couple more minutes here, because we talked about last week in the big board that it could be a very long year for Bill Belichick.
Oh, right. Yeah.
7.5. Again, I feel like this is a very ambitious number for a team that did not make 7 wins last year, made 6 wins last year. If you are betting on North Carolina to go over, you are betting on Bill Belichick to substantially improve this team. Only returned 6 starters, but that comes with an asterisk, because among those 6 starters are 3 offensive linemen who are currently not listed as number 1 on their depth chart. So It's really only 3 returning starters, a totally revamped offense. Belichick really not known as an offensive guy to begin with. Their quarterback is a transfer from South Alabama. I've gone back and looked at him. I watched him a little bit last year. He's not really a passer. He's more of an athlete. In fact, I believe every time he attempted more than 30 passes, South Alabama lost last year. Basically returning none of the skill. Their offense last year was entirely built around Marion Hampton, who was obviously gone to the NFL. A lot of transfer portal kids, decent, not fantastic, but decent recruiting class. Again, I think 7.5 is a very ambitious number. I don't know that I think the schedule is the most difficult, although I feel like TCU is kind of a little bit underrated as a first game there. So out of conference, I don't know that I think North Carolina's coming out with a flying start in that Labor Day game to kick off the season. And again, North Carolina, not necessarily a team used to playing these primetime games. So, again, I feel 7.5, very ambitious. And I don't want to just give out unders in the ACC, although I would also note Louisville at 8.5, a team that got gutted last year after being surprisingly good. They do have Miller Moss at the quarterback position, the transfer kid from Southern Cal, who I liked when he was at Southern Cal, but really did fall off his last 6 or 8 starts there last season. 8.5 is a really ambitious number, I feel, for Louisville, so I'd be inclined to go over there. I don't want to give out only under, so we will say the one team we really like to go over in the ACC is Georgia Tech.
Okay.
Sitting at 7.5. They were kind of a surprise last year, but they bring back a fair amount of talent, including Haynes King, who I would personally make the all-ACC quarterback in the preseason. They're bringing back 3 starting offensive linemen off a very good offensive line. They're bringing back the running back. And the schedule's really not that challenging. They go out to start the year against Colorado. They do play Clemson early season, but it's at home. And they miss Miami. So they miss, I believe they miss SMU too. So they miss the, 2 of the top 3 teams in the ACC in their schedule. Now, they do have that season closer at Georgia, which is a game they never win. So you have to factor that one off the top and saying you're trying to get 8 out of 11. I think they absolutely can accomplish that, particularly if they go out and win in Boulder in the first week against Colorado week 1. And we'll talk about Colorado in a minute. Let's just say I think they can do it.
All right.
Get into the Big 12.
Yep.
And again, a very interesting team to me, a very interesting number, and that is Arizona State sitting at 8.5. And I really don't know why this is only 8.5. When you look at their schedule, not really that challenging out of conference. And people forget playoff team last year, also returning 17 starters from last year's team, the most returning starters in Division One football. They're returning the quarterback Sam Levitt, who was very good last year. They're returning Jordan Tyson at wide receiver, who outside of the Smith boys, the one at Alabama and the one at Ohio State, Tyson is probably as good a wide receiver outside of those two as you will find anywhere in the country. Basically, on offense, they return all the names you knew except Cam Scattaboo. Now, we've talked about on the show, America loves its white running backs.
Yes, they
So
do.
they are, missing Cam Scattaboo as he is off to the New York Giants. But
He was a great college player, though. I mean, you had to love this guy.
I mean, he had a great last season. I mean,
Yeah.
and everybody enjoyed his playing style. I 100% get that. But I don't think, physically speaking, he's the most irreplaceable
No, but
talent in
already
the history
established.
of.
To your point about everybody loves the white running back, already very popular among the people that are both
Oh, yeah. He's going to be
viewing
popular
and
everywhere you go.
covering the Giants in preseason.
Yes, 100%. But again, they're returning 7 starters on offense, 10 on defense, 8.5 number. Again, schedule not that ambitious out of conference. I think Arizona State looks very good to go over that 8.5. I think they've looked very good to win the Big 12 again and return to the NCAA playoffs. And look, we saw them give Texas everything they wanted. Through the course of that ball game. Not impossible. Arizona State could win a playoff game. If with a break here and a break there. So again, 8.5. I would much rather take 8.5 at Arizona State over than I would Clemson or Miami to talk about it 9.5 among the ACC favorites. Some other teams to look at. I think the single best of these two conferences is the over on BYU 6.5. I don't know why BYU is not getting more respect coming into the season. They were a 9-win football team last year. Yes, they stumbled at the end of the regular season and ended up missing the Big 12 playoff, which they honestly should have been there. But they returned 10 starters, including their quarterback. They did club Colorado like a baby seal in that bowl game when everybody was very hyped on Colorado going into
Yep.
that game. And again, 10 returning starters, including key positions, and only an over and under of 6.5. You look at the schedule again. Do they catch most of the toughest opponents in the Big 12? They do. But, again, they're out of conference. Portland State, Stanford, East Carolina, all of those should be winnable games for BYU. They go to Colorado after that. Then they're home against West Virginia, on the road against Arizona. BYU, to my mind, should be 5-0, 6-1 headed into the Utah game. Now, things do get tough after that. Road trips to Iowa State and Texas Tech. But again, if you only need 1, maybe 2 wins out of the last 6, if you're BYU, I think they're easily going to win 2 games out of 6 to finish the season. I really like the over of BYU. Now, look, I'm not going to lie to people. I'm not a huge futures guy. I don't love locking up your money for the entire season. But if you're going to do it, I think this number on BYU is very, very appetizing as the over.
It's kind of like nursing a great meal sometimes.
Yeah.
Instead of gobbling it down in a couple of bites, it transpires over the long course of time, and it's sort of like betting a golf tournament from the opening round, where you get a lot of action for your money.
Yes,
You
that's a
get
good
to
way.
ride it, and it's I mean, with baseball, it's especially tough. 162 games, but the ups and downs and following it all season long kind of makes it the entertainment that was supposed to be implied when you started wagering, as opposed to just straight up, hey, I got to bet the next race because it's going off in 2 minutes. So yeah, it's kind of a fun bet. I mean, a lot of people like it, and if you can put some things together with that, you might be able to make a pretty good score. Betting championships and things like that. So yeah, I think it's very. And look, it obviously is popular because we know that these kind of prop bets are more popular than betting games themselves, or so it seems.
Well, let's talk about that last one, which is the under in the Big 12, and that is the Colorado Buffaloes sitting at a 5.5 total. I think that is a very ambitious total. Now, are they really testing themselves in out of conference? Not hugely. but they do start the year with a home game against Georgia Tech. Now, I think when they scheduled that game probably 3 or 4 years ago, that looked more like a win to them. I think Georgia Tech's going to be a good football team this year. I think that will be an opening season loss for Colorado. The main thing with Colorado, when you look at their Big 12 schedule, they are catching everybody who's good. They are home against BYU early in the year. They've got home against Iowa State in October. They're on the road against Utah. They're at home against Arizona State and Kansas State to close the season. And before that, a road game in West Virginia. Again, West Virginia's not that great, but going to West Virginia is never an easy road trip. So they are catching just about everybody you don't want to catch in the Big 12. You factor in that, and you look at Colorado, only returning 8 starters. The bad news is 3 of them are offensive linemen, and I'm not sure any of those guys returning is a good thing for the Colorado. But the main thing for me is you look at who they brought in to play quarterback, which is Caden Salter, the kid from Liberty. It looks like an entirely philosophical change is going to have to take place at Colorado, because they were basically a run and shoot style spread offense, threw the ball 40, 45 times a game with regularity. They're bringing in a guy who's a pure spread option quarterback during his years at Liberty. Hadn't really struggled with accuracy last year. I believe he only completed like 52% of his passes, which for a modern college game, that's a very low number, particularly when you're Liberty and you're playing in a league where you're the most talented team, probably 9 games out of 10. He does not look like a guy who's going to be able to just drop back like Shador did, survey the field and throw accurate passes. So again, are you going to completely change your offensive philosophy for your new quarterback? If so, that's going to be a difficult transition. Particularly, again, the Big 12, not necessarily the strongest league up top, but a lot of depth at top. Again, I think Arizona State will be the class of the league, but I could make a case for Iowa State. I could make a case for Kansas State. Some people think Utah is going to back up. BYU, again, looks very solid to me. The depth up top in the Big 12 is not bad at all. So again, I think a very difficult test for Colorado this season, and definitely looking for them at the under the 5.5. I think we'll see considerable regression from Colorado after I thought a pretty impressive progression last year, beyond what I would have thought really realistically possible last year. I think we'll see them regress without Travis Hunter and obviously without Shador. And all the wide receivers are gone too, by the way.
Over under, I think is at 1 and a hook. A number of profiles that 60 Minutes will do on Deion Sanders this year.
Oh, way over. Way over.
You think they'll go 2?
He's got the cancer thing going.
Right. Another reason, to go ahead and bring him on there.
Minimum of 2. It could be as many as 4.
This while they're accomplishing a rather ugly under on a 5.5 game total for the season. We only got about a minute left, so we might have to bypass the big board this week, which we'll have it next week. You've already got one in the can there. But just curious, Notre Dame. I mean, I know you were not a big fan of Riley Leonard. He seemed to fit the bill there and do what Freeman needed him to do. Not the strongest of arms. We've seen other quarterbacks succeed on the college level, get hammered in the pros with that same set of credentials. But how do they look to you? I mean, they're favored, you mentioned, over Miami, which many people have extremely high regard for this year, in spite of the crystal ball factor. And maybe they're even factoring that in. So there seems to be high regard for Miami's talent coming in this year. And the new quarterback and Beck. But where's Notre Dame stand, in your opinion?
Top 10. I mean, again, I think people are very forgiving of Notre Dame because of the playoff run, and I would, again, be inclined to point out there's some good fortune involved in that playoff run. They caught Georgia without Carson Beck, with a quarterback who really did not look like he was ready to play. They caught an Indiana team that was just clearly outmanned and probably did not belong in the playoffs, but got in because of a very fortunate series of breaks in scheduling. They caught Penn State on a night where Allard just could not throw the football to save his life. And then I thought Ohio State actually beat them a little bit worse than the final score there. They came back, made it close at the end, and then Ohio State got the bomb the last couple minutes to cover. But I thought Ohio State fairly dominated that game. All of that combined, again, Freeman's a really good coach, no hatred. But all of that, I think, kind of blocked out the fact that you lost at home to Northern Illinois. And honestly, not one of the great Northern Illinois teams of all time. Kind of an Northern Illinois. To me, that loss in and of itself should have been a playoff disqualifier because it's not like the rest of your regular season was running the gauntlet. Like the fact that you went 11-1, I'm going to just flat out say it, not that impressive to me when the loss was to Northern Illinois and you didn't really beat a bunch of teams of note. So, do I think they're top 10? Yes. Do I think they're top 5? Not in my personal opinion, because I don't think they've really shored up the quarterback position. That said, Jeremiah Love, as good a running back as there is in the country. I believe they returned 3 or 4 starters off a very solid offensive line. Greathouse, who was their best wide receiver, is coming back. And I want to say 6 or 7 defensive starters off of a. So they're returning a fair amount here. And there's certainly reason for ambition. I honestly, the thing with Notre Dame is I think that season starting game to kick off the year with Miami is gigantic for their fortunes, and possibly for both teams. The one underrated thing living in South Florida, I could say, is keep your eye on the weather
Yeah.
because for South Florida, we have had a crazy hot summer, and if it persists as we get into late August, early September, that could become a huge, huge factor in this football game because I mean, what we've been averaging like 97 degrees during it. It's a night game, but it's still unseasonably hot even at night here. And
Yeah.
this could be for kids from the Midwest a huge endurance test right out of the gate in week 1. You could see Notre Dame get worn down through the course of that football game.
That's field. I mean, during the daytime, especially in
Brutal.
September. I used to do some announcements down on the field, so I had to go down there both before the game and about 10 minutes prior to halftime. And standing on the field, I literally thought my shoes were on fire. I had to look down. I never had any condition that I've been under, and that includes climbing the Grand Canyon in summertime and doing a little hiking down there. Very easy to get down, not as easy to get back up that mile and a hook.
Well,
But
look, I'm not trying to get into politics and global warming. Think what you think. I don't care.
yeah,
The city of Tampa hit 100 degrees for the first time in the history
yes,
of the city of Tampa this week. I believe we down here in South Florida came close yesterday. I peaked at 98 or something like that, and it's been like that all week down here. So again, if this unseasonably hot weather stays around for September, that's going to be a brutal game, and really both teams' season fortunes could have a lot riding on that in week 1. So we'll see. I think Notre Dame's good. I think Miami's going to be very good
yeah.
if
If they can
you can
overcome the
avoid crystal ball.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Carson Beck, I mean, does he come back or is his elbow in actuality shredded?
Most reports I've read seems that he's looking good
Seems okay.
in
All right.
practice. So we'll see.
All right, very good. Professor, great stuff as always. We'll do a couple of more conferences next week and we'll try and squeeze
Next week we'll be looking at the big boys. We'll look at the SEC and the Big Ten, and then the last week before the regular season kicks off, we will. Excuse me. We'll look at national championship and Heisman stuff.
Sounds great. All right, Professor, always a pleasure, my friend. You have a great weekend. We'll talk to you again next week.
See ya.
The Professor, ladies and gentlemen. There's a lot of stuff there, a lot of over-unders in these conference plays, but nobody researches this. My man, Mark Lawrence, who puts out an outstanding college football guide, which a lot of people figure is an essential tool for their handicapping. I know you get a lot of stuff online, and you can get that online, but I always liked the actual hard copy of the publication that is available also. Mark Lawrence, outstanding world championship handicapper. He's made a couple of appearances here on the show across the year, and we'll try and engage him again. But yeah, real good stuff there from the professor. Well researched on the over-under possibilities today in the ACC and the Big 12. All right, you guys have a great weekend. Did have one yesterday that we didn't get a chance to actually give out on the show, but looking at some tennis action, Emma Navarro, kind of a grinder, going against Yastrzemska, not Yastrzemski, not Carl, but Yastrzemska, who I think has given her problems before and is capable in any match. A nice little pickup there at plus 170. Coco Gauff managed to bounce back. Otherwise, she was going to be victimized by what could have been an hellacious upset in her matchup yesterday. So the players, the women are in Montreal, the men are in Toronto. as they're competing in Canada. And interesting matchup today. I don't know which way I'd go. Nisimova, who's been playing very well, but then got flattened. Absolutely. Talk about clubbing of seals in that Wimbledon final, where she made the final. She's been making progress all year, and then gets what? She get double bageled in that one by Swiatek. Goes against Emma Raducanu, who, of course, won a U.S. Open a couple of years ago over Leylah Fernandez in what was an unlikely finals matchup. And she's been making some nice strides towards a comeback after kind of falling off in terms of her form and battling some injuries. But interesting matchup today taking place in Montreal. And yeah, I mean, looms as somewhat of a toss-up off recent form. All right, we'll see you guys on Monday. Thanks so much. Mike Jones will join us, so we'll have some more things, baseball and other activity, and, of course, getting into the first full week of preseason in the NFL. Thanks, sir, for tuning us in. For the Professor, I'm Jeff DeForest. I'll catch you next time, the next edition of Bury Your Bookie.